Good evening, dreamer. Welcome back to Boring Science for Sleep, where quiet questions drift into gentle stories and curiosity leads you softly toward rest. Tonight, we turn to a question as old as wonder itself, one that whispers in silence, one that stirs in both science and philosophy. Can the mind exist without the brain? You carry your brain with you always, 3 pounds of living tissue, folds and currents of neurons sparking silently. And yet, your experience of being, your thoughts, your dreams, your memories, these feel lighter than matter, as though they float above the physical. Where does the mind truly reside? Is it nothing more than the brain's electricity, or is it something that can drift beyond? Across history, people have wondered. Ancient philosophers asked whether the soul could live apart from flesh. Modern scientists trace every thought to neurons firing in patterns. Spiritual traditions tell stories of minds untethered, while biology insists the brain is the anchor of all we are. And so, the question remains, an echo in both science and mystery, not one to keep you awake with urgency, but one to hold softly in your imagination as you drift into the night. Tonight we will wander through the landscapes of thought, exploring how the brain shapes the mind, how myths and science speak of separation, and how, in the end, the question itself can be a source of calm. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it where you are? Wherever you are, let the silence hold you, and let the question rest gently beside you like a companion in the dark. If you place a brain on a scale, it has weight. About 3 pounds in an adult human, softer than butter, folded into valleys and ridges. It is matter, flesh and fluid, tissue and blood. You can touch it, hold it, measure its volume, map its parts. But the mind, where is its weight? Where is its form? The mind is not something you can place in a jar or photograph directly. It is not tissue or bone. The mind is the quiet theatre of thought, the stage where images appear, where words form, where emotions rise and fall like tides. When you remember a face, when you hear music in silence, when you feel joy or sorrow, it is not the brain you sense, it is the mind. And yet, we speak of them together as though they are the same. Brain is the organ, mind is the experience. One is matter, one is meaning. One pulses with electricity, the other with awareness. You cannot touch the mind, but you cannot escape it either. It follows you into dreams, it shapes every perception. It is the lens through which you know the world. Scientists try to describe the difference with careful language. The brain, they say, is the hardware. Neurons, axons, synapses. The mind is the software, patterns of thought, memory, imagination. Others compare it to music. The brain is the instrument, the mind is the melody. The instrument is physical, carved of wood or steel. The melody floats in the air, intangible, ungraspable, and yet utterly real. Still, these are metaphors, not answers. No matter how finely we describe it, the boundary remains blurred. You cannot point to a single spot in the brain and say, here is the mind, for the mind is not one place, but the sum of countless places working together. Neurons fire in vast networks, chemicals surge and ebb, electricity dances, and somehow, out of this, experience arises. The weight of thought is not in grams or pounds, but in moments and feelings. Philosophers have wrestled with this distinction for millennia. Some claim the mind is nothing more than the brain's activity, an emergent property like the glow of a flame from burning wood. Others argue the mind is separate, a soul, a self that only uses the brain as its vessel. Between these poles lie countless shades of belief, some leaning toward material, others toward mystery. But tonight, let us not choose between them. Instead, let us linger in the question itself, letting it settle like mist. For the question alone is calming. It slows the rush of thought, invites reflection, reminds us that not everything must be solved before sleep. What does it mean, after all, to have a mind? It means to have awareness, not just of the world outside, but of the world within. It means to feel time passing, to carry memory, to imagine futures. It means to dream. No other object in the universe, no rock, no river, no star, seems to do this, unless life has given it mind. A star burns brightly, but it does not know it burns. A river flows, but it does not know it flows. You think, and you know you think. That is the mind's peculiar gift. And yet, the brain and the mind cannot be fully separated. When the brain falters, the mind shifts. Injury can change memory. Chemicals can alter mood. Sleep can blur awareness. When the brain rests in deep anesthesia, the mind fades too. The two are braided together, inseparable in life. Still, the feeling remains that the mind is somehow more, something weightless, invisible, beyond measurement. To hold both ideas at once is not contradiction, but balance. The brain as organ, the mind as experience. One tangible, one ethereal, one belonging to science, the other to poetry. And perhaps both are needed, for neither explains the fullness of being alone. So when we ask, what is the mind? We are really asking, what does it mean to be alive, to be aware? The answer is not a definition, but a journey. A journey through neurons and networks, but also through mystery and imagination. And tonight, you do not need to solve it. You need only to rest in the gentle knowing that your mind is both fragile and vast, both fleeting and timeless. That even as your body lies still, your mind drifts, weaving images, carrying thoughts, humming softly with its hidden weight. And so, if the mind is the melody, then the brain is the instrument. Let us drift now into the folds of that living organ and see how its structure gives shape to the quiet wonder of consciousness. If the mind is the melody, then the brain is the instrument, and what an instrument it is, delicate yet powerful, silent yet full of unseen music. 3 pounds of tissue resting in your skull, folded and furrowed like a landscape of valleys and ridges. Within it, billions of neurons fire and rest, connect and release, carrying signals that somehow add up to thought, memory, sensation, and self. When you think of the brain, you might picture the surface, the grey folds of the cerebral cortex. This thin sheet, no thicker than the bark of a tree, holds much of what we call higher thought. It is here that language forms, that decisions emerge, that imagination paints its endless pictures. Every word you have spoken, every dream you have seen, has passed through these folds as signals of electricity and chemistry. Beneath the cortex lie deeper structures, older in evolution, more primal in function. The hippocampus, curved like a seahorse, tucks away your memories, filing the moments of your life. The amygdala, almond-shaped, colors those memories with emotion, fear, joy, sorrow, desire. The thalamus relays sensory signals, like a quiet switchboard, sending sights and sounds and touches to the places that can understand them. The hypothalamus, small yet mighty, keeps your body in balance, temperature, hunger, thirst, hormones, all woven into the rhythm of being. Each of these regions is a player in the orchestra. Alone, they can do little. Together, their harmony creates consciousness, the living presence of you. It is not one note, not one instrument, but the sum of all of them, playing in synchrony, moment by moment. What is most astonishing is the scale. The brain contains about 86 billion neurons. Each neuron connects to thousands of others, creating trillions of connections. These connections are not fixed. They change, grow, weaken, strengthen. With every thought, with every new memory, the connections shift, reshaping the song of your mind. From these shifting patterns arises the most familiar, yet most mysterious thing: awareness. The sight of a sunrise, the sound of rain, the feeling of love or loss, all of these begin as signals in the brain. Neurons firing, chemicals flowing, networks humming. Out of this matter comes meaning. Out of tissue comes thought. Out of electricity comes experience. And yet, when you hold a brain in your hands, you cannot see the thoughts within it. You cannot find the color red, the sound of laughter, the memory of a childhood day. The brain is the stage, but the play itself is invisible. Consciousness is not in the matter, but in the pattern. It is the performance, not the instrument. Still, we know the two are bound together. Change the brain, and the mind changes. A stroke in one region may steal speech. An injury in another may alter personality. Chemicals that shift neurotransmitters can brighten mood or darken it. Dreams vanish when the brain is silenced by anesthesia, and they return when activity resumes. The mind, fragile and fluid, rides upon the currents of the brain. This does not make the mind less mysterious. If anything, it deepens the mystery. How can matter produce meaning? How can electricity become memory? How can folds of tissue give rise to the vast inner landscape of thought? These are questions that science pursues, but has not yet answered fully. What we know is that consciousness is not housed in one spot. It is distributed, spread across networks, emerging from the conversation between many regions. The mind is not a single flame, but a constellation of sparks, lighting up together, fading together, weaving experience from their union. It is humbling to realize how delicate this is. Your sense of self, your memories, your awareness of this very moment all rest upon fragile tissue, tiny chemicals, silent sparks. And yet, it is robust too. Through all of life's changes, through joy and grief, through growth and age, the brain carries the mind forward, steady as a tide. Perhaps this is why the brain feels sacred to us, even in its silence. It is more than organ, it is the seat of self. To care for it is to care for who we are. To imagine its loss is to imagine the loss of mind. And so we cherish it, study it, and yet also recognize that what it produces, the mind, is greater than its sum. As you rest tonight, your brain continues its quiet work. Even in sleep, neurons fire in patterns, weaving dreams, filing memories, balancing the body. The instrument never ceases, and the melody never ends. You are carried in its music always, even when you drift far from awareness. So when we say the brain shapes the mind, we mean that matter shapes meaning, flesh shapes thought, neurons shape self. The mind may feel weightless, but its song is rooted in this living organ, always playing, always present. And yet, for as much as the brain explains, a question remains. Stories from history, myths from culture, whispers from philosophy, all suggest the mind might wander beyond its organ. Let us drift now into those shadows of separation, where science meets mystery and wonder lingers. For as long as humans have known the weight of the brain, they have also dreamed of the mind untethered from it. In the quiet hours of history, people wondered, could thought drift beyond the body? Could memory, soul, or spirit exist without the soft folds of tissue inside the skull? Long before microscopes and brain scans, ancient traditions spoke of the self as more than flesh. In Egypt, priests preserved the heart as the seat of the soul, while the brain was set aside, thought unimportant. In Greece, philosophers debated whether the mind was woven of matter or made of something finer. Plato imagined the soul as eternal, only temporarily housed in the body. Aristotle, though more rooted in biology, still spoke of the psyche, the animating force of life. Across the world, similar ideas appeared. In India, the Upanishads described consciousness as part of a deeper, universal spirit, not bound by the body. In China, the concept of Shen carried the idea of spirit or mind, flowing beyond flesh. In countless indigenous traditions, the essence of a person, call it soul, spirit, or breath, was believed to live on after the body's death. These stories were not science, but they were not foolish either. They were attempts to answer the same silent question we hold tonight. Is the mind only matter, or is it something more? Even in modern times, echoes of this mystery persist. Some describe near-death experiences, visions of leaving the body, floating above, watching life from a distance. Others speak of dreams so vivid they feel more real than waking, or of moments of intuition as though touched by something outside the brain. Whether these are tricks of neurons or glimpses of another reality, they feed the sense that mind may not be fully contained. Science, of course, offers caution. Experiences of leaving the body can be traced to brain activity, areas of the cortex that misfire, chemicals that surge under stress. Dreams are born of neurons weaving images from fragments of memory. Even visions in meditation or ritual may be explained by shifts in brain rhythms. In this view, the mind never leaves. It only feels as though it does. But still, the mystery endures. For even if every vision, every story, every myth is tied to the brain, the question itself remains open. How can matter create the sense of self? How can neurons make you feel that you are more than neurons? Science explains patterns, but meaning slips through its fingers. Perhaps that is why myths remain so powerful. They remind us that questions need not always have answers. They allow us to wonder without resolution, to dream without proof. They place the mind in shadows, where boundaries blur, where imagination lives. There is comfort in these stories, even if they are not science. They tell us that the self is not fragile, that thought is not only sparks of tissue, that memory may drift like mist beyond bone. They give language to our longing, that who we are might be more than matter, that our inner world might not end when our brain grows still. And even if science insists otherwise, the myths serve another purpose. They remind us of humility, that the brain, as vast as it is, may not hold all the answers. That mystery has its place alongside knowledge. That wonder is part of being alive. So when you hear stories of souls wandering, of minds surviving without matter, you need not believe or disbelieve. You may simply rest in the mystery. For in mystery, there is room to breathe, to dream, to let go. The shadows of separation may not tell us what is true, but they tell us what it feels like to hope. They tell us that human beings, in every age, have reached for something more. And in that reaching, they have found meaning, even if not proof. Tonight, you may hold the same thought gently. Perhaps the mind is only the brain's song, or perhaps it is something that drifts beyond. You need not decide. You need only to listen, as the question hums softly in the dark. And yet, mystery alone does not guide us. To truly glimpse the mind, we must also look at what happens when the brain grows quiet. In sleep, in anesthesia, in the stillness of coma, the question takes another shape. Let us drift now into the science of stillness, where silence reveals the bond between mind and brain. Close your eyes, and the world falls away. Sounds soften, colors fade, the weight of your body sinks into stillness, and yet, your brain does not stop. It shifts, it slows, it changes its rhythm. The question, then, is simple but profound. What happens to the mind when the brain rests? The first place to look is in sleep. Every night, your brain cycles through stages: light sleep, deep sleep, dreaming sleep. In light sleep, thoughts drift like clouds, faint images, and fragments of memory. In deep sleep, the brain grows quiet. Waves of activity slow into long rolling patterns, like a tide moving in and out. The mind, too, quiets here. Conscious thought fades, awareness dims, and yet something remains. The body restores, the brain heals, and memory solidifies in silence. Then comes dreaming. In rapid eye movement sleep, the brain stirs again, alive with bursts of activity. Neurons fire in patterns almost as vivid as waking, and the mind paints worlds of its own, dreamscapes, stories, visions both strange and familiar. Here, the mind seems to live without the body, wandering landscapes that dissolve with dawn. Yet even these dreams are tied to the brain, rising from its sparks, falling with its silence. Anesthesia gives us another window. When medicine flows into the bloodstream, it quiets the brain's chatter, turning off networks that generate awareness. Unlike sleep, where the mind drifts and dreams, anesthesia brings true stillness. Time passes without notice. One moment you are awake, the next you are gone, and then suddenly you return, as if no time had passed. The brain rests, and with it, the mind vanishes. Coma lies deeper still. When injury or illness silences much of the brain, consciousness fades, sometimes for days, weeks, or even years. The body breathes, the heart beats, but the mind seems absent, and yet, even here, mysteries remain. Some patients in coma show flickers of brain activity when spoken to, faint patterns that suggest awareness hidden beneath the silence. The mind may not be gone, only unreachable, like a whisper buried under waves. From these states, sleep, anesthesia, coma, one lesson emerges. When the brain rests, the mind follows. To still the organ is to still the experience. There is no clear separation, no mind floating free. Instead, the two are braided together, rising and falling in unison. And yet, in the quiet, we also learn something else, that the mind is not constant. It does not blaze without pause. It dims, it fades, it drifts, it disappears and returns. Consciousness is not an unbroken line, but a tide, always ebbing and flowing with the rhythms of the brain. This is humbling but also comforting, for it means that rest is natural. It means that silence is part of the song. Just as the brain needs its pauses, the mind too finds peace in stillness. To sleep is not to lose yourself, but to return to balance. To rest is not to vanish, but to be renewed. Science tells us much about how this works. Electrodes measure brain waves, slow and steady in deep sleep, faster and erratic in dreams. Imaging scans show networks turning off and on, consciousness switching like a light in a house with many rooms. Chemistry explains it too. Neurotransmitters ebb and flow, hormones rise and fall, guiding the cycles of night and day. But science cannot tell us what it feels like to drift into nothing and return. It cannot capture the quiet surrender of sleep, or the sudden gap of anesthesia, or the fragile edge of coma. Those remain the territory of mystery, where experience and biology meet but do not merge fully. And so we return to the question, when the brain rests, what becomes of the mind? The answer seems both simple and profound. It rests as well. It follows its instrument. It dims when the neurons dim. It brightens when they spark. It does not exist apart, and yet it feels larger than matter. The melody is gone when the instrument is silent, but while it plays, the song feels infinite. Perhaps this is the balance we must accept, that the mind may not survive without the brain, but in the time it exists, it carries us far beyond the body. In dreams, in thought, in imagination, the mind wanders farther than flesh can go. It is born of the brain, but it feels boundless. So as you lie here tonight, let your brain find its stillness. Let the waves slow, let the neurons dim. Your mind will follow, gently, into silence. And in that silence there is no fear. There is only renewal, the soft return of balance, the quiet promise of waking again. And yet, the brain is not always steady. Sometimes it falters, sometimes it breaks, and the mind changes with it. Let us drift now into the fragility of these networks and see what happens when the organ of thought begins to fail. The brain is astonishing in its power. Billions of neurons, trillions of connections, an endless hum of signals rising and falling like tides. And yet, it is also fragile. A blow, a clot, a chemical imbalance, even the slow drift of age, any of these can change the brain's patterns, and with them, the mind itself. We know this truth most clearly in illness. When the networks falter, the self shifts. A stroke in the left hemisphere can steal words from the lips, while the person inside still longs to speak. Alzheimer's disease can unravel memory thread by thread, until names fade, places vanish, whole years dissolve into mist. Parkinson's disease trembles the body, but it also trembles the mind, slowing thought, dimming emotion. In each of these cases, the mind is not gone, but altered. The melody still plays, but the instrument is out of tune. Sometimes the song is faint, sometimes distorted, sometimes broken into fragments. And yet, beneath it, there is still someone, still a self, still a flicker of awareness, still a mind moving in rhythm with a fragile brain. This fragility shows us something profound. The mind is not fixed. It is not a single essence that survives untouched. It is woven, moment by moment, from the health of its organ. Change the organ, and the mind changes too. Personality may shift, moods may tilt, memories may vanish or return. The sense of I is not anchored in stone, but in tissue, living, changing, vulnerable. And yet, there is resilience as well. The brain can heal, sometimes in ways that seem miraculous. Neurons reroute, networks rebuild. Functions lost in one region can emerge in another. After injury, people relearn speech, movement, even fragments of memory. The mind adapts, adjusting to the brain's new landscape. Fragility and resilience are interwoven, like light and shadow in the story of thought. It is humbling to see how tightly bound the two are. The mind feels vast, boundless, infinite when you are lost in imagination or memory. But when the brain falters, the vastness contracts. A single clot, a tiny lesion, can silence entire dimensions of experience. Awareness shrinks, and you realize how delicate consciousness is, how much it depends on tissue no thicker than a few millimeters. And yet, this fragility also reveals beauty, for it means that every clear thought, every memory, every dream is a gift, that the ability to feel yourself as you is not guaranteed, but precious. That to sit here, even in stillness, and think, I am, is a miracle born of fragile networks. There is comfort, too, in knowing that fragility is part of being alive. You are not a perfect machine, unyielding, unchanging. You are a living organism, tender and resilient, carrying both strength and weakness. Your mind's changes, whether in illness or in age, are not failures but the natural echoes of biology. The instrument grows old, but the song remains, even if softer. And so, when the brain falters, the question of the mind deepens. Can the mind exist without the brain? In these moments, the answer seems clear. No. The two are inseparable, their fates bound together. When one stumbles, the other stumbles. When one fades, the other fades. But even here, in fragility, there is mystery, for within the broken song of the brain, sparks of the mind still shine. A person who has lost words may still sing. One who has lost memory may still feel joy at the sight of a loved one's face. Even when networks falter, the mind flickers on, finding ways to express itself. The light bends, but it does not vanish. This balance of fragility and persistence is perhaps the essence of consciousness. It is not indestructible, but it is tenacious. It clings to the living brain, adapting to every change, shifting with every wave, yet still it endures. As you rest tonight, your brain is working in silence, repairing cells, clearing toxins, rewiring connections. Fragility and resilience are both at play, even now, guiding your mind through rest. You need not worry about it. Your brain does this without your effort. You are carried by its networks, fragile yet faithful, always shaping your awareness, always holding your mind close. And yet, the question stretches beyond biology. If the brain is fragile and mortal, could the mind ever find another home? Could thought exist in wires, in circuits, in machines not made of flesh? Let us drift now into the world beyond biology and wonder about artificial minds. If the mind is bound so closely to the brain, we might ask, could it ever exist elsewhere? Could awareness arise not from folds of tissue but from wires, circuits, and silicon? Could the melody of thought be played on an instrument other than flesh? This is not only a question of science fiction, though science fiction has long dreamed of it. Writers imagine machines that think, robots that feel, computers that awaken. But in our own time, the question has stepped out of imagination and into laboratories. Machines already translate voices, recognize faces, write words, even mimic human conversation. That Ellie they are not conscious, not yet perhaps, but they make us wonder. If the brain is matter and electricity, why could not another form of matter and electricity give rise to mind as well? The human brain runs on networks, billions of neurons, trillions of connections, signals firing in endless patterns. A computer too runs on networks, though its units are transistors instead of neurons. In theory, if a machine could replicate the complexity of a brain, could the spark of consciousness emerge? If the mind is the song of the brain, could another instrument, equally complex, produce a song of its own? Scientists debate this fiercely. Some argue that consciousness requires biology, that neurons, with their unique chemistry, their living adaptability, cannot be replaced by circuits. Others argue that what matters is not the material, but the pattern. If a machine could reproduce the pattern of firing, the same waves of activity, then awareness might emerge, no matter the substance. In this view, the mind is not a property of neurons, but of networks. And so we circle back to the question, is the mind bound to the brain, or could it wander into machines? We do not yet know. No computer has yet claimed awareness. No machine has yet said, "I feel." But the progress is enough to make us pause, to wonder. Even without true consciousness, machines already echo parts of the mind. They remember faster, calculate better, search deeper than any human brain. But do they know they remember? Do they feel the answer? Here lies the difference. The brain gives rise not only to processing, but to experience, to the warmth of joy, the ache of grief, the color of a sunset. Can a circuit know what red is? Can it feel sadness? Can it taste sweetness? Perhaps the mind is not only about patterns of thought, but about embodiment. The brain is not isolated. It is tied to a body, sensing the world through skin, eyes, ears, taste, movement. The mind arises not from neurons alone, but from neurons in a body in a world. A machine may process, but without senses, without flesh, without hunger or breath, can it ever truly awaken? Some say no, others say it is only a matter of time. And then there is the question of self. The human mind is not just thought, but identity, the sense that you are you, continuous through time. Could a machine ever have that? Could a network of circuits ever feel its own being, remember its own past, imagine its own future? If it could, would we call it a mind? Would we call it alive? We cannot yet answer, and perhaps we need not rush. For now, the machine is a mirror, showing us pieces of the mind, but not the whole. It helps us reflect on what it means to think, to feel, to be. It reminds us that the brain, though fragile, is still unmatched in its song. Still, it is worth pausing and wonder, if one day a machine did awaken, would its mind be separate from its hardware, as ours feels separate from the brain? Would it ask the same questions we ask? Where does thought come from? Am I only circuits, or am I more? In imagining artificial minds, we glimpse our own reflection. For tonight, you need not solve this. You need only let the thought drift gently. Perhaps the mind is bound to the brain. Perhaps it could arise elsewhere. Both possibilities carry mystery. Both carry awe. One says we are unique, bound to our fragile organ. The other says we are part of something larger. That mind itself is a pattern the universe can play in many forms. As you rest, your brain hums in silence, carrying you into dreams. Machines may hum as well, but their silence is empty. For now, the melody belongs to you and to the countless minds alive in this turning world. And yet, beyond wires and circuits lies another mystery. Stories of minds drifting where no machine and no biology can reach. Let us wander now into the echoes of near death and the visions of leaving the body, where belief and science meet in uneasy shadow. There are moments when the mind seems to slip free, moments that linger at the edge of life and death. They are called near-death experiences, stories told by those who have stood at the boundary of silence and returned, floating above the body, seeing themselves from the outside, drifting through tunnels of light, feeling peace, timelessness, or the presence of something beyond. Such experiences are not new. Ancient texts speak of souls leaving the body in visions, traveling to other realms, then returning. Shamans describe journeys beyond flesh, guided by spirit. In many traditions, these accounts became proof that the mind is not chained to the brain, that awareness can travel where the body cannot. In modern times, doctors and scientists listen too. Patients revived from cardiac arrest sometimes tell of watching their own resuscitation, hearing words spoken when they were unconscious. Others describe drifting upward into vast silence or being drawn toward light. These echoes of experience, fragile yet vivid, have sparked wonder. Could the mind exist, even briefly, without the brain? Science offers explanations. When the brain is starved of oxygen, neurons misfire, producing visions of light, tunnels, and floating. The out-of-body sensation can be triggered by stimulating certain regions of the brain, a proof that it is not magic, but misfiring. Chemicals surge in crisis, flooding the mind with calm, detaching it from pain. What feels like the soul leaving may be the brain itself, protecting the self with illusions of peace. And yet, there remain unanswered questions. Some reports include details hard to explain. descriptions of events seen when the eyes were closed, words recalled when consciousness should have been gone. Are these chance memories? Or do they point to something we do not yet understand? Science treads carefully here, acknowledging both the power of the brain and the mystery that lingers. Out-of-body experiences are not limited to near death. Some arise in meditation, in dreams, in moments of extreme stress or trauma. People describe floating above their own form, looking down, sensing both presence and distance. The brain can be tricked into feeling separation, into imagining itself from outside. And yet, to the one who feels it, the experience is as real as waking life. Perhaps this is the heart of the mystery. Whether or not the mind truly leaves, the feeling of leaving is deeply human. It is a metaphor come alive, an image of the self stepping beyond itself. It tells us what we long to believe, that we are more than matter, more than fragile networks of neurons. But longing is not proof. What it offers is comfort. The comfort that the self might not end with the body, that awareness might continue, even briefly, even beyond. Whether or not this is true, the feeling has power. It eases fear, it softens grief, it gives hope. From a scientific view, these experiences reveal the brain's creativity. Even at its edge, it weaves stories, paints visions, gives meaning. From a human view, they reveal our hunger for more, our desire that the mind might survive. Both views can coexist, like two melodies woven together. So tonight, as you rest, you need not decide whether the mind truly drifts beyond. You need only hold the question gently, letting it calm you rather than stir you. For in the end, near-death and out-of-body experiences remind us of something simple, that the boundary between brain and mind is not fully known. That mystery remains. And in that mystery, we find wonder. And yet, mystery does not belong to visions alone. For centuries, philosophers have wrestled with the same question, weighing brain against mind, matter against meaning. Let us drift now into their reflections, where thought itself becomes our guide. The question of whether the mind can exist without the brain is not new. Long before laboratories, before electrodes, before scans that map the living organ, there were philosophers. They did not peer into tissue but into thought itself, asking what it means to be and what it means to know. Their answers differ, but their wonder is the same as ours tonight. One of the oldest voices is Plato. He spoke of the soul as eternal, housed in the body only for a time. For him, the mind was not born of the brain but only borrowed its vessel. Death, then, was not an ending but a release, the mind returning to a greater truth beyond flesh. His student Aristotle, though more earthbound, still spoke of the psyche, the principle of life. He imagined it as inseparable from the body, but he also believed it gave form to matter, a kind of guiding essence. Centuries later, René Descartes drew a sharp line. "I think, therefore I am," he wrote, making mind the foundation of being. For Descartes, the mind was a separate substance from the body, immaterial and distinct. The brain was matter, but the mind was spirit, joined but not the same. This view, called dualism, still lingers, echoing in our sense that thought feels different from tissue, that awareness feels more than flesh. Others disagreed. Thomas Hobbes argued that mind is only motion in matter, thoughts arising from the machinery of the brain. Centuries later, modern materialists would expand on this. Consciousness is an emergent property, no more separate from neurons than wetness is separate from water. In this view, the mind is real, but it cannot exist apart. It is born of the brain, and when the brain ends, so too does the mind. Between these poles, dualist and materialist, lie other voices. Some suggest that mind and matter are two sides of the same coin, not separate substances but different ways of seeing the same reality. This is called monism. In one form, idealists claim that all is mind, and matter is only its shadow. In another, physicalists claim that all is matter, and mind is only its song. And then, there are panpsychists, who propose that consciousness is a fundamental feature of the universe, present in every particle, woven into every atom, not emerging but always existing. Each philosophy offers a frame, but none closes the question, for how can thought explain itself? The mind, trying to understand the mind, is like a candle trying to see its own flame. What it illuminates is partial, what it leaves in shadow is vast. Still, philosophy comforts us, not by answering but by reminding us that the question is ancient, enduring, shared. You are not alone in wondering whether the mind is bound or free. Every generation has asked, every culture has offered visions. Some find peace in believing the mind outlives the brain. Others find peace in knowing that matter alone creates thought, and that meaning lies in the fleeting. Perhaps what matters most is not which answer is true, but that both invite reflection. To see the mind as spirit is to feel connected to something timeless. To see it as matter is to cherish the present moment, knowing it is precious because it will not last. Either way, the question deepens our sense of being. And tonight, as you rest, you can let these philosophies drift like stars overhead. You need not choose one to guide your dreams. You can simply listen, softly, as they echo across centuries, voices of wonder, of doubt, of hope. And yet, philosophy does not end the story, for beyond human thought lies a wider possibility, that mind itself is not bound to individuals, or even to Earth, but may be woven into the cosmos. Let us drift now into that vast reflection, where the idea of a cosmic mind waits in silence. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the night sky, stars scattered like dust, galaxies whirling in silence, the vastness stretching far beyond what the mind can hold. Now ask yourself, is all of this only matter, or is there something like mind woven into the fabric of the cosmos itself? This question, whether consciousness is universal, has haunted both philosophers and scientists. We know the brain gives rise to awareness in us. We suspect other animals carry it too, the bird that remembers, the dolphin that plays, the chimpanzee that recognizes itself in a mirror. But what if consciousness is not confined to living beings? What if it is a property of the universe itself, present in every atom, every wave of light, every fold of space-time? This idea is called panpsychism, the belief that consciousness is fundamental, not emergent. Just as matter has mass and charge, perhaps it also has a spark of experience. A particle may not think or dream, but it may have the faintest shimmer of awareness. Combine trillions of such sparks, and the brightness grows, until at last it shines as a human mind. At first, the idea feels strange. How could a rock be aware? How could a river think? But panpsychism does not say that stones and rivers have minds like ours. It says only that they may hold the smallest flicker of experience, the seed of what we call awareness. Just as the ocean is made of drops, perhaps mind is made of these hidden sparks, gathered and arranged in living forms. Science does not prove this, but it does not dismiss it entirely. Quantum physics tells us that particles behave in ways that defy simple mechanics, as though something unseen guides them. Information theory suggests that the universe may be built not only of matter but of patterns, and patterns are what minds perceive. Cosmology reminds us that the universe is not static but alive with motion, cycles, and rhythm. If life emerged from these patterns, why not mind as well? Other traditions speak similarly. In Hindu thought, consciousness is not personal but universal. Brahman, the ground of being, expressed through every self. In Buddhism, awareness is not bound to one mind but interwoven, like air moving through many lungs. In indigenous traditions, rivers, mountains, animals, and stars are alive with spirit, each carrying its own way of knowing. Across cultures, the cosmos has often been seen not as dead matter, but as mindful in its own way. If this is true, even partly, then the mind within you is not isolated. It is a ripple in a larger sea, a wave in an endless ocean of awareness. When you think, when you feel, when you dream, you are echoing something the universe already holds. Your brain may shape it, your body may carry it, but the spark itself may belong to the cosmos. And perhaps that is why the question of mind feels so vast. It is not only about neurons and networks, not only about bodies and organs, it is about belonging. About wondering whether consciousness is not ours alone, but the universe looking at itself through countless eyes, countless forms. Of course, science moves carefully here. To claim consciousness in stars or atoms is more poetry than proof. Yet even scientists admit that awareness remains a hard problem, difficult to explain in terms of biology alone. Where does the feeling of being come from? How does matter produce meaning? If we cannot answer this for neurons, perhaps we should not be too quick to rule it out for galaxies. There is a quiet comfort in imagining a cosmic mind. It means you are never truly alone. The same spark that flickers in you flickers in stars, in rivers, in trees. Your awareness is a thread in a greater fabric, woven with everything that is. Death, then, is not disappearance, but return, the wave sinking back into the sea, the thread dissolving into the tapestry. And even if this is not literally true, it can be true in feeling. For when you look at the stars, when you feel wonder at their silence, you are already connected. Your neurons are responding to the cosmos. Your mind is echoing its rhythm. Whether or not the universe is conscious, you are conscious of it. That, too, is a form of unity. So tonight, as you rest, imagine yourself as part of this cosmic mind. Your breath is the universe breathing. Your thoughts are the universe thinking. Your awareness is the universe awake in one small corner. You are not separate. You are part of a vast awareness that stretches beyond stars, beyond galaxies, beyond time. And yet, after all these wonders, we return to something simpler, the comfort of the question itself. For whether the mind is bound to the brain, or whether it is woven into the cosmos, the mystery itself can bring peace. Let us drift now into that resting reflection, where the unknown becomes a lullaby. Not every question needs an answer. Some exist to be held, like smooth stones in the hand, turned over gently, admired for their weight and their silence. The question of the mind and the brain is one of these. Can the mind exist without the brain? We have wandered through science and philosophy, myth and mystery, stories of biology and echoes of spirit. Still the question remains, unresolved. And perhaps that is why it comforts us. For certainty is sharp. It closes doors, leaves no room to dream. Mystery, by contrast, is soft. It leaves space open, invites imagination, lets us drift. To hold the question is to rest in wonder, to allow the unknown to be part of life's rhythm. Think of all we have seen tonight. The brain, folded and fragile, shaping thought. The mind, weightless and vast, carrying awareness. Myths that tell of souls untethered. Science that measures waves of sleep, moments of silence, sparks of experience. Philosophers debating matter and spirit. Scientists tracing neurons, dreamers seeing light. And then, the wider cosmos, whispering that perhaps consciousness itself belongs to the universe. None of these erase the others. They coexist, weaving a tapestry of perspectives. To look at them together is to see not contradiction, but harmony. Each view is a note, and together they form the music of the question. Why does this comfort us? Because it reminds us that we are part of something larger, that our minds, fragile and fleeting, are also boundless in imagination, that our brains, mortal and delicate, carry thoughts that reach beyond stars, that we do not need final answers to feel wonder. Wonder itself is enough. Even in the silence of sleep, your mind does not vanish. It drifts through dreams, rests in darkness, then returns with the morning light. In the same way, perhaps mystery is the dream of life, the space where meaning grows, even without conclusion. To rest with the question is to rest with the truth that not everything must be known for life to be precious. And so, as you lie here, you can let go of the need to solve. You can let the question cradle you, soft and endless. Maybe the mind is only the brain's melody. Maybe it is more. Either way, you are here, conscious in this moment, aware of breath and stillness. That is enough. There is peace in not knowing. There is rest in mystery. The question itself is a kind of lullaby, reminding you that you are carried not by answers, but by the gentle flow of being. So, close your eyes, feel your breath, trust that your brain is carrying your mind into quietness, into dreams, and let yourself be soothed by the thought that you are part of a great unknown, and that the unknown itself is gentle. Good night, dreamer. May your rest be deep, your dreams soft, and may you wake to another day guided not by certainty, but by wonder.